What if neutrality wasn't always noble? What if sitting on the sidelines of the deadliest war in history wasn't just a survival tactic, but a profitable business decision? Switzerland is often admired as a beacon of peace, diplomacy, and stability. The Swiss flag is globally recognized not for its power, but for its promise of neutrality. During World War II, while the rest of Europe was engulfed in destruction, Switzerland stood untouched. No bombs fell on Zurich. No Nazi tanks rolled through Geneva. No Allied troops liberated Bern. And yet behind this peaceful image lies a darker truth. Because while Switzerland never picked a side militarily, it did pick a side economically, whichever side paid more. Switzerland didn't fight, it traded, it banked, it benefited. So how did a landlocked mountainous country, surrounded by Axis and Allied powers, manage to emerge richer after World War II than before it started? The answer reveals a web of secret gold, controversial banking, and a financial strategy that turned neutrality into an opportunity. To understand how Switzerland profited from World War II without officially picking a side, we need to go back to before the war began. In the years leading up to World War II, Switzerland had already cemented its status as a global financial hub. Its banking laws, especially the Swiss banking law of 1934, offered something that few other countries could: secrecy. The law made it a criminal offense for Swiss bankers to disclose the identity of their clients. This was a godsend for anyone who wanted to move money out of the public eye, including corrupt officials, wealthy elites, and later, Nazi officers. As tensions rose in Europe, Swiss banks saw an influx of foreign assets. Jews fleeing persecution, fearing expropriation, placed their savings into secret accounts in hopes that their wealth would survive even if they didn't. At the same time, wealthy Germans, including Nazi party members, also used Swiss accounts to shield money from scrutiny. The Swiss banking industry didn't discriminate. If the money was clean or dirty, they didn't ask. If it arrived, they accepted. And then, in 1939, war broke out. Switzerland immediately declared neutrality, just as it had done in World War I. It prepared militarily, fortifying its Alpine redoubt in case of invasion. But it also prepared economically, crafting a system of trade and finance that would allow it to do business with both sides without appearing to support either. This is where things get murky. As the Reich expanded, it looted gold from the central banks of occupied countries and from victims of the Holocaust. That gold, melted down and recast, was sold to neutral countries, Switzerland being the primary buyer. Why? Because Switzerland had what Germany needed: hard currency, connections to international markets, and banking services outside the reach of Allied powers. In exchange for Nazi gold, Switzerland provided convertible currencies, imported materials like oil and rubber, which Germany lacked, and most critically, transferred payments across borders using its banking system. This wasn't just one or two transactions. Between 1939 and 1945, the Swiss National Bank accepted roughly $440 million in 1940s dollars in gold from Nazi Germany. Over $130 million of that gold is believed to have been stolen from occupied nations, Jewish victims, and central banks plundered by the Nazis. The Swiss justified this by claiming they couldn't know for certain where the gold came from, and they claimed neutrality meant not interfering in trade unless it was militarily necessary. But the Allies knew, and they warned Switzerland repeatedly. Still, the transactions continued. Meanwhile, the Swiss also traded with the Allies, selling goods and offering financial services. But Germany was the more dependent partner. Swiss rail lines, which connected Germany to Italy, carried weapons and supplies crucial to the Nazi war effort. Swiss factories produced precision instruments, machine tools, and other industrial goods that helped fuel German industry. At its core, Switzerland walked a tightrope. It claimed neutrality while enabling trade and finance that kept the war machine of Nazi Germany running. By 1943, things started to shift. The Allies were gaining ground, and pressure mounted on Switzerland to curtail its support of the Axis. The US and Britain began threatening to cut off Switzerland's access to key materials if it didn't comply. In 1944, under diplomatic pressure, Switzerland agreed to limit trade with Germany and restrict its financial transactions. But by then, the damage was done. The war was nearing its end, and Switzerland's economic position was secure. When the war concluded in 1945, much of Europe was in ruins. Economies were shattered, cities obliterated, currencies worthless. But Switzerland, it was intact, economically stronger than ever. Swiss banks were flush with deposits, some of them from Holocaust victims, whose accounts remained untouched for decades because heirs lacked the documentation to access them. Swiss industries had thrived supplying precision equipment, and the country's central bank held hundreds of millions of dollars in gold, some of it stolen. In the aftermath, the Allies turned their attention to Switzerland's role. The Washington Agreement of 1946 forced Switzerland to return $58 million in Nazi gold. It was a fraction of the total. No legal action was taken beyond that. For decades, the issue was largely forgotten. Swiss secrecy laws kept the truth buried, literally and figuratively. But in the 1990s, the past resurfaced. Journalists and researchers began to uncover hidden accounts belonging to Holocaust victims. Survivors and their descendants demanded justice. Lawsuits were filed. Investigations opened. In 1996, a US Senate Banking Committee hearing publicly aired the evidence. Swiss banks were accused of stonewalling survivors, hiding accounts, and profiting from the dead. The scandal sparked a global outcry. Eventually, Swiss banks agreed to a $1.25 billion settlement with Holocaust survivors in 1998. It was one of the largest restitution payments in history. But to critics, it came decades too late. More importantly, it revealed a pattern. Secrecy enables exploitation. And it wasn't just Switzerland. Other neutral countries had benefited from wartime trade, but Switzerland had done so while presenting itself as above the fray. Its neutrality had shielded it not only from bombs, but from accountability. Which brings us to today. Swiss banks remain powerful. As of the early 2020s, Switzerland managed an estimated 25% of global cross-border wealth. Its banking secrecy laws have been modified, but the culture of discretion persists. Billions in assets remain hidden, anonymous, and untraceable. And recent investigations, like the 2022 leak of Credit Suisse account data, show that Swiss banks have continued to do business with dictators, criminals, and sanctioned individuals. In some ways, the game hasn't changed. Only the players have. The legacy of World War II isn't just historical, it's institutional. It shows how financial systems can outlast regimes, how neutrality can serve as both shield and sword, and how profit can override principle in the fog of war. So what should we take away from this? First, neutrality is never truly neutral when money is involved. Economic decisions have moral consequences, even if they are disguised as strategy. Second, secrecy is a double-edged sword. It can protect the innocent, but it can also shield the guilty. When transparency is absent, accountability fades. Third, history doesn't stay buried. The truth eventually surfaces, often with interest, and nations that fail to reckon with their past risk repeating it. If Switzerland's story teaches us anything, it's that survival and profit often come with hidden costs. The country may not have fought in World War II, but it certainly wasn't uninvolved. So the next time you hear about a neutral nation, ask yourself, neutral for whom? And more importantly, at what cost? If you found this story compelling, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the hidden corners of history, finance, and power. Leave a comment. Was Switzerland's strategy smart or cynical? Should neutrality have limits? Let's keep the conversation going. Because the past isn't over. It's just hiding in plain sight. See you in the next episode.